Every era in history believes it is living through the most turbulent of times. But our age carries a particular kind of restlessness, an exhaustion of the soul, a collapse of certainties, a spreading fear that humanity is moving faster than its own conscience can guide it. People do not know how to name this anxiety, but they feel it pressing against the edges of daily life. It is the sense that something essential is slipping away. And into this global unease, God placed a message, not to terrify, not to condemn, but to offer one last extraordinary hope. A hope entrusted to a woman the world barely noticed, Saint Faustina. Let me ask you something sincerely. Have you ever felt that the world around you is accelerating towards something you can't quite define, like a storm building, yet hidden behind ordinary days? Have you ever sensed that humanity is thirsting for mercy, but searching for it in all the wrong places? Faustina lived long before our modern chaos, yet Jesus revealed to her a message so urgent, so global, so prophetic, that it was meant not for her era, but for ours. He told her that his message of divine mercy would be the last hope for humanity, not the first, not the second, but the final lifeline extended before the world steps into a decisive spiritual moment. This last hope is not a threat. It is a rescue. It is the outpouring of a heart that refuses to give up on humanity, even when humanity seems prepared to give up on itself. Faustina felt overwhelmed by the weight of this revelation. She was young, hidden, unknown. How could she carry a message meant for centuries beyond her lifetime? But Jesus insisted, "You will prepare the world for my final coming." Not through fear, not through judgment, but through mercy, a wave of it, a flood, strong enough to meet the darkness gathering across the modern world. This is the third and last hope, the revelation that when the world reaches the limits of its own strength, God reveals the depths of his compassion. Faustina began to understand that divine mercy is not merely a devotion, not a painting, not a chaplet, but a spiritual ark built for the storms of this century, a place where the wounded can shelter, a place where the guilty can return without fear, a place where the exhausted can finally rest. Our times are marked by disbelief, confusion, division, and the erosion of meaning. But Jesus told Faustina that his mercy would rise precisely when the world seemed least deserving of it. The darker the hour, the brighter the hope. This message was not meant to frighten us about what is coming. It was meant to assure us that before anything terrifying happens, God has already released his greatest remedy. Mercy as the final bridge. Mercy as the final call. Mercy as the last unstoppable light. And the soul that understands this message does not fear the future. It walks toward it with trust. There is a pattern in salvation history that repeats itself across centuries. When the human heart grows weary, when nations lose their moral compass, when fear begins shaping the destiny of entire generations, God does something unexpected. He does not send punishment first. He sends mercy, mercy so vast that it looks almost unreasonable, mercy so tender it feels impossible in such a hardened world. Let me ask something diretamente ao seu coração. Have you noticed how often people today speak of feeling overwhelmed, spiritually numb, or disconnected from meaning, as if the world is demanding strength no soul can sustain? Have you ever sensed that humanity's suffering is no longer individual but collective, like a wound that spans continents? This is exactly the world that the message entrusted to Faustina was meant for. A world that had exhausted its own solutions, a world running on empty, a world approaching a spiritual threshold without realizing it. Jesus revealed to her that there would come a time when humanity would reach the limit of its own wisdom, the limit of its own moral structures, the limit of its own strength. And in that precise moment, the world would need not a new ideology, not a new political order, not a new system, but a new outpouring of mercy. Not mercy in theory, but mercy as power, as shield, as healing, as the very oxygen of the soul. Faustina understood something we often forget. Divine mercy is not the soft side of God. It is his strongest response to human despair. It is his final attempt to draw souls before justice must speak. It is his greatest revelation for a world losing the sense of God altogether. Jesus told her that humanity is living in a time of unprecedented grace, grace that previous centuries could not have imagined. The floodgates of his heart have been opened in a decisive way, and he desires the entire world to take refuge beneath the rays flowing from it. But he also warned her that this grace would not be offered forever without response. That is why this message is called the third and last hope. The first hope was creation itself, humanity walking with God in innocence. The second hope was the incarnation, God walking with humanity in flesh. The third and last hope is mercy poured out without limit before the final unfolding of his justice. This is not meant to frighten the soul, it is meant to awaken it. Because the greatest danger of our times is not moral collapse, nor global conflict, nor cultural confusion. The greatest danger is spiritual indifference, a heart so overwhelmed or distracted that it no longer looks toward God at all. Faustina saw that mercy is God's way of breaking through that numbness, his way of pulling the world back from the brink, his way of reaching the soul that has forgotten how to hope. The final hope is not a warning, it is a rescue, and once the soul understands this, it begins to see our times not as hopeless, but as the moment God has chosen to make his mercy known more powerfully than ever before. There's a detail in the revelations Faustina received that most people overlook, something subtle, almost whispered, but essential to understanding why the message of mercy is the last hope. Mercy is not simply God's kindness extended to humanity. It is his final call before justice must speak. Not as a punishment, but as the natural unfolding of a world that continues to refuse the healing it desperately needs. Let me ask you something con sinceridade. Have you ever felt that the world's suffering seems deeper than anything political or social explanations can reach? As if beneath every crisis, economic, moral, emotional, there is a spiritual fracture no one wants to name? Faustina saw this clearly. She saw that the heart of humanity is wounded in a way only God's mercy can heal. But she also saw something even more urgent. The world is reaching a point where that mercy must be embraced or lost. Jesus told her that he is holding back the day of justice solely because of the plea of mercy. Not because humanity deserves it, but because his heart cannot bear to lose souls. This is what makes mercy the third and last hope. It is given before the world crosses a line it cannot uncross. But here is the truth that most misunderstand. This is not a threat. It is not fear-based spirituality. It is not doom prophecy. It is love refusing to give up, even when humanity is exhausted, distracted, or indifferent. Faustina wrote that Jesus said to her, "Before the day of justice, I am sending the day of mercy." In those words, the world receives its diagnosis and its cure. The diagnosis: humanity is sick with a wound it cannot heal on its own. The cure: a flood of mercy that will cleanse even the deepest darkness, if the soul will only allow itself to be washed. This is why Jesus insisted Faustina proclaim the message of mercy everywhere, not to terrorize people, but to prepare them, to wake them gently before the world shakes them harshly. The warning hidden within mercy is a call to return, a call to trust, a call to receive, a call to remember God before the noise of the world swallows the last traces of silence. Faustina once trembled before the weight of this mission, but Jesus reassured her that the message was not meant to punish hearts, it was meant to save them. He wanted the world to know that the doors of his mercy are flung wide open now, but that they will not remain open indefinitely. Not because he tires of humanity, but because humanity is running out of time to respond. Mercy is the bridge before the floodwaters rise. Mercy is the light before the final night. Mercy is the hand extended before the world slips from its grasp. And for those who embrace it, even in the smallest way, the message becomes not a warning, but a refuge. The soul that hears this call begins to understand something profound. The times we live in are not accidental. They are chosen. Chosen as the moment in which God offers the world an ocean of mercy so deep that no sin, no fear, no collapse can outrun it. This is why Faustina was told this message is for our times, because our times need it most. There are moments in history when the structures humanity relies on begin to shake. moments when people realize that what once felt stable is no longer enough to hold the weight of their fears, their hopes, or their identity. Institutions tremble, ideologies fade, relationships strain, inner strength wears thin. And beneath all of this, a quiet question rises from the depths of the soul. What will remain when everything else collapses? Let me ask você algo profundamente pessoal. Have you ever felt as though the life you carefully built, your plans, your expectations, your certainty, suddenly felt fragile, as if a single unexpected moment could bring it all down? Have you ever sensed that something inside you longs for a foundation nothing in this world can provide? This is the spiritual landscape for which the final message of mercy was given. When Faustina wrote her diary, she described a world already showing signs of spiritual erosion. But what Jesus revealed to her went far beyond her own time. He showed her that there would come an age when humanity would try to build life without God, an age where progress would accelerate, but inner peace would decline, where people would know more but understand less, where technology would expand, but the human heart would grow lonelier. And in that age, our age, mercy would be the only foundation that does not crack. This is why the message entrusted to her is not merely comforting, it is essential. It was given not for a peaceful era, but for a collapsing one. Not for the spiritually strong, but for the spiritually disoriented. Not for the saints, but for the exhausted. Jesus revealed that mercy would be the last architecture of hope, the one place where the soul could stand when every other certainty fell away. Not morality alone, not discipline alone, not ritual alone, but mercy, love poured out with such force that no darkness, no confusion, no global chaos could erase it. Humanity will try to cling to many things as the inner storms grow. Success, intellect, politics, personal power, spiritual autonomy. But none of these are strong enough to carry the weight of a trembling world. Mercy, however, is not built by human hands. It cannot crumble because its foundation is divine. Faustina foresaw a time when souls would cry out from the chaos around them, longing for something solid, something gentle, something true. And Jesus told her that his mercy would rise like a final lighthouse, a signal in the storm that would guide every wandering soul safely home. The beauty of this message is that it does not deny the darkness of our times. It simply refuses to let the darkness have the last word. Mercy is not God's backup plan. It is his final blueprint. And when the world loses its grip on every other foundation, the soul that has learned to rely on mercy will not fall. It will stand, quietly, steadily, fearlessly, because it has anchored itself in the one thing that cannot be shaken. This is the promise for our times. When everything collapses, mercy remains. There is a moment in every soul's journey where God's message stops feeling distant, historical, or universal, and suddenly becomes intimate. It is the moment when the prophecy entrusted to Faustina is no longer about the world, no longer about nations or generations, but about you, your wounds, your questions, your fears, your hope. Let me perguntar algo direto ao seu coração. Have you ever felt that the world's chaos awakened a personal turmoil inside you, a kind of inner shaking that has nothing to do with politics or news, but everything to do with a quiet spiritual longing you can't ignore anymore? Have you ever sensed that the instability around you is mirroring an instability within you? This is the mystery Jesus revealed. The message of mercy is not simply the last hope for humanity, it is the last hope for the individual soul. God's final offering is not directed at crowds, it is directed at each person's hidden interior life. Because before global events unfold, something far more decisive happens. The human heart reaches a crossroads. Faustina learned that the ultimate drama of salvation does not begin on the stage of the world, but in the silence of one person finally confronting their own need for God. This is why mercy is the final hope, because it speaks to the deepest wound of the human condition, the wound of thinking we can save ourselves. Every era believes it can build its own future. Ours is the first to believe it can build its own identity, its own morality, its own truth, its own purpose, without God. And yet beneath that confidence lies a growing loneliness, a spiritual exhaustion we try to disguise with noise, entertainment, productivity, self-invention. Jesus revealed to Faustina that mercy reaches the soul precisely when all these self-built structures begin to collapse. Not to embarrass us, not to punish our pride, but to set us free from illusions too heavy for the human heart to bear. In other words, the third and last hope arrives when the soul finally realizes that it cannot heal its own emptiness. Mercy steps in at the exact moment when everything else stops working. This is why Jesus' message is not ominous. It is personal. He is not warning the world as a judge stands over a courtroom. He is bending down to the wounded, the anxious, the ashamed, the overwhelmed. He is calling each person by name, offering a relationship that can withstand whatever comes next. The world may be approaching a turning point, but the human heart is approaching one too, which means the final hope is not something we wait to see, it is something we choose to receive. Faustina understood that the times we live in are not random. They are arranged. Arranged so that every soul has one last chance to discover the truth. Nothing else can anchor life. Not success, not pleasure, not progress, not reason, only mercy. And when the soul realizes this, something extraordinary happens. Fear loses its power, the future loses its terror, and God's final hope becomes not a message of warning, but a message of belonging. There comes a time in every divine message when the soul must decide what it will do with what it has heard, not out of fear, not out of pressure, but out of a mysterious recognition. This is not simply information. This is invitation. The third and last hope entrusted to Faustina is exactly that, an invitation shaped by mercy, not by threat, by love, not by urgency, by tenderness, not by fear. Let me te perguntar algo que toca o centro da fé. Have you ever felt that the world is heading towards something uncertain, and yet deep inside you, there is a quiet assurance that God is still writing the final chapter? Have you sensed that beneath all the noise, chaos, and confusion, there is a supernatural order preparing the world for something greater than any crisis it faces? That inner awareness is not imagination. It is the echo of the message Jesus entrusted to Faustina. He told her that mercy would be the last great gift offered to the world before his justice unfolds, not to condemn the soul, but to rescue it. And this rescue is not dramatic. It is gentle, it is persistent, it is personal. It happens each time a soul returns to him in trust. Each time someone whispers, "Jesus, I need you." Each time a heart finally stops running. The final hope is not a global spectacle. It is a quiet revolution inside the human heart. Faustina understood that mercy would one day be the dividing line, not between nations, not between ideologies, but between souls who trust and souls who refuse. Trust becomes the doorway through which mercy enters. Refusal becomes the barrier that closes the heart from within. This is why Jesus asked her to proclaim mercy until the end of time, because the world would one day reach a moment where mercy must do what nothing else can: heal what is shattered, bind what is broken, restore what is lost, save what is dying. And in that hour, our hour, he wants the world to know that he has not withdrawn. He is not silent. He is not distant. He is offering the one gift capable of holding humanity together, himself. Mercy is not a message. It is a person. It is the heart that beat on Calvary and still beats for the world today. The third and last hope is not the beginning of fear. It is the beginning of awakening. When the world's lights begin to dim, his light will burn brighter. When human strength collapses, his grace will rise. When confusion spreads, his truth will clarify. When the future trembles, his mercy will steady the soul. This is the promise for our times. Mercy will carry the world into God's tomorrow. The soul that trusts in this message, truly trusts, will not be overwhelmed by what comes, because it stands not on the fragility of the world, but on the eternal heart of Christ, a heart that has already won, a mercy that will never be withdrawn, a hope that will be the last and the greatest.